Jamal's small hands clutched the crumpled bills and coins, each one earned through weeks of saving every penny he could. Today was special. Today was his mom's birthday. The woman who had always worked hard to take care of him, to give him everything she could, even when it meant going without. Jamal loved her more than anything, and he wanted to give her a gift that showed just how much. With a skip in his step, he walked down the busy street toward the fancy jewelry store he had spotted many times before. It wasn't a store he could afford to shop in, but he had worked hard, and today he felt proud. He couldn't wait to see his mom smile when she opened the gift. As he stepped into the store, his eyes immediately fell on a delicate gold necklace displayed in the center. It was beautiful, shining under the soft lights. It was perfect. His heart raced with excitement as he walked up to the glass case. He reached for the necklace, imagining the look on his mom's face when she saw it. But just as his fingers brushed against the gold, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Can I help you?" Jamal looked up, startled. Standing behind him was an older white man, his arms crossed and his eyes narrowed. The store owner's sneer was almost as cold as his words. He looked at Jamal with disdain, as though the mere presence of the boy in his store was an inconvenience. Jamal's heart sank, but he wasn't going to back down. He had come this far. Today, he was going to do something special for his mom. But he could feel the weight of the store owner's judgment bearing down on him. Jamal's smile began to fade the moment the store owner spoke, his harsh tone slicing through the excitement he had felt just moments ago. His grip on the crumpled bills tightened, but he didn't let go of his resolve. "I want to buy this necklace for my mom," Jamal said, his voice steady despite the rising sense of humiliation building inside him. This was supposed to be a special moment, a gift he had worked so hard for. But now the dream seemed to be slipping away. The store owner looked at Jamal with a dismissive sneer, his eyes scanning the crumpled dollar bills and coins in Jamal's hand. The man scoffed, shaking his head. "Kid," the store owner said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "this isn't a flea market, you can't afford that." The words hit Jamal like a punch to the gut. His face burned with shame as a couple of customers nearby giggled. Their whispers stung, making Jamal feel smaller than he ever had before. But Jamal wasn't going to give up. His mom deserved that necklace. He carefully counted out the money, his hands shaking. There wasn't much, but it was all he had. "I have $12.50, Jamal said, his voice a little more hopeful, despite the weight of the situation. The store owner let out a loud, mocking laugh, his voice echoing through the store. "Oh, wow! 12 whole dollars. Maybe you can buy a candy bar instead." Jamal's heart sank. His eyes burned, and the sting of humiliation was sharp. His hands trembled, but he refused to let the tears fall. He wouldn't cry in front of these strangers. He had worked so hard for this moment, and he wasn't going to let the store owner take it away from him. "Please, sir," Jamal pleaded, his voice trembling but firm. "It's for my mom. She's the best mom in the world. Please, I just want to buy it for her." The store owner didn't even look at him. He snatched the necklace from the counter, his fingers cold and cruel. "Get out!" he spat, his voice laced with venom. "We don't sell to beggars." Jamal stood frozen in disbelief, his heart shattering at the cruel words. The laughter from the customers was a blur in the background as the store owner shoved him away, his face twisted in contempt. Jamal blinked back the tears that threatened to spill. His small shoulders trembled, but he kept his head high. He wasn't going to let this man break him. He wasn't going to let anyone tell him he wasn't worthy. With one last glance at the necklace, the gift he had dreamed of giving his mom, Jamal turned and walked out of the store. His steps were slow, heavy, as if each one weighed him down more than the last, but inside, a spark of determination was kindling. He had been humiliated, but he wouldn't let this define him. He wasn't a beggar. He was a son who loved his mother. And no one, no matter how cruel, could take that away from him. As Jamal stepped out into the street, he didn't see the people laughing behind him, nor the mocking glances. He only thought of his mom, her face, her love, her warmth, and the promise he had made to himself. He would find a way to make this right. Just as Jamal walked out of the jewelry store, his heart heavy with shame, a deep, authoritative voice rang out behind him, cutting through the tense air. "Is this how you treat paying customers?" The voice was commanding, rich with power and authority. The whole store froze at the sound of it. The laughter, the whispers, the noise, it all stopped as if the world itself had paused. The store owner, who had been busy basking in his perceived victory, whipped around, his face draining of color. His arrogant demeanor faltered for the first time as he saw the man standing in the doorway. Standing tall in the entrance was a black man, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his presence filling the entire room. The man's eyes were sharp, his gaze intense and unwavering. This was no ordinary customer. This was Mr. Carter, a billionaire, a business mogul, a philanthropist known for his sharp mind and no-tolerance policy for injustice. He was a man who didn't just talk about doing the right thing, he lived it. And in this moment, the store owner had just made the mistake of a lifetime. Mr. Carter walked forward with confidence, his every step deliberate. He moved with an air of authority that made the store owner step back in apprehension. When Mr. Carter reached Jamal, he placed a firm, comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "This young man was just trying to buy a gift for his mother," Mr. Carter said calmly, his voice smooth but laced with quiet anger. "Instead, you chose to humiliate him in front of everyone." The store owner stammered, his face a mixture of confusion and fear. Sir, I didn't mean—" Mr. Carter didn't let him finish. He didn't need to hear excuses. Instead, he turned to Jamal, his eyes softening. "Son," Mr. Carter said, smiling warmly, "how much did you say you had?" Jamal, still overwhelmed by the turn of events, looked up at Mr. Carter, his voice barely above a whisper. $12.50, he replied. Mr. Carter nodded, his smile never leaving his face. "Then this store," he said, pausing for dramatic effect, "is about to have a sale." The store owner's face turned even paler, his mouth opening and closing as if he were searching for words that wouldn't come. He could feel the weight of the moment crashing down on him. He had thought he was in control, but now everything was shifting. "Here's how it works," Mr. Carter continued, his voice firm but kind. "You're going to sell this boy the necklace, and you're going to sell it to him for $12.50, exactly what he has. No more, no less." He turned to the store owner, his expression hardening. "And if you can't do that, then I suggest you find a new line of work, because you're clearly not cut out for this one." The store owner's mouth worked uselessly for a moment. He had no idea who this man was, but the sheer force of his presence made him feel small, insignificant. He glanced at the necklace, then back at Mr. Carter, at a loss for words. Jamal, still processing the moment, glanced up at Mr. Carter, a mix of confusion and awe on his face. "Wait, really?" he asked, barely able to believe what was happening. "I can really buy it?" Mr. Carter nodded, his hand still resting gently on Jamal's shoulder. "Yes, son. Go ahead." With the nod of Mr. Carter's approval, Jamal stepped forward, his heart racing with excitement and disbelief. He reached for the necklace, his hands shaking slightly as he counted out his crumpled bills and coins. The store owner stood there, frozen, unable to do anything but watch as Jamal made the purchase that had once seemed impossible. When Jamal handed over his money, Mr. Carter smiled and turned to the cashier. "Ring him up," he said, his voice clear and authoritative. As the cashier processed the sale, the store owner watched in stunned silence. The moment that he thought he could control, his harsh dismissal of Jamal, his cruel mockery, had just turned on him, and there was nothing he could do to fix it. Jamal took the necklace, holding it carefully in his hands. For the first time that day, a genuine smile broke across his face. He had done it. He had bought the perfect gift for his mom. Mr. Carter turned back to him, his eyes kind. "You did the right thing, Jamal," he said, his voice full of warmth. "Your mom is lucky to have a son like you." Jamal smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. Thank you so much." As the two of them walked toward the door, the store owner remained frozen behind them, a man utterly humbled by the justice he had just witnessed. He realized, far too late, that it wasn't just Jamal who had been wronged, it was him, and the shame of it would follow him for a long time. As Jamal stepped out of the store, the cool air of the evening seemed fresher, the weight of his burden lifted. He wasn't just a boy who had bought a necklace for his mother. He was someone who had shown resilience in the face of cruelty, someone who had done the right thing despite the odds. And now, with the help of a powerful man, that right thing had been rewarded in the most unexpected way. Jamal's heart swelled with pride as he looked down at the delicate gold necklace in his hands. He was going to make his mom proud, and in the process, he had learned that sometimes even the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the biggest changes. Justice had been served, and karma, as always, had a way of catching up. As Jamal clutched the delicate necklace in his hands, his heart still racing with excitement, Mr. Carter turned his attention back to the store owner. The look in his eyes had shifted. It was no longer just about teaching a lesson. It was about something far bigger. Without missing a beat, Mr. Carter reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black credit card, the kind that seemed to shimmer with power. He looked at the store owner, a glint of resolve in his gaze. "I'll buy the necklace," Mr. Carter said calmly, but then added, "and the store." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The store owner's jaw dropped, his eyes widened in disbelief, as if he couldn't quite comprehend what he had just heard. "Wait, what?" the store owner stammered, his face turning a sickly shade of pale as the reality of what was happening slowly began to sink in. His arrogance, his smugness, the way he had belittled Jamal, all of it was about to come crashing down on him. Mr. Carter smirked, enjoying the power shift. He turned to an assistant who had been quietly observing the scene from the side, standing at attention like a well-trained employee. "Make the call. This business is now under new ownership," Mr. Carter instructed, his tone as cold and firm as the stone beneath his feet. The store owner's mind raced, trying to grasp what was happening, but it was too late. His eyes flicked to the assistant, who had already pulled out their phone, dialing a number with the practiced speed of someone who had done this before. The store owner's knees wobbled slightly, his panic becoming more evident, as the assistant spoke in the background. "Mr. Carter has bought this business. Your services are no longer required," the assistant said into the phone, and the store owner's face turned an ashen gray. He stood there, frozen, realizing that he had just been fired from his own store. The weight of the humiliation settled over him like a thick fog, suffocating him in front of the very customers he had belittled. He had thought he was untouchable. He had laughed at Jamal. He had laughed at the idea that someone could challenge him, but now, in an instant, he was nothing. The man who had used his power to harm others was now the one without any. Meanwhile, Mr. Carter bent down to Jamal's level, his presence gentle, yet full of strength. He looked at the boy with a warm smile that made Jamal's heart swell with gratitude. He had already done more for Jamal than he could ever have imagined. "Here," Mr. Carter said, handing Jamal the necklace. "Give this to your mom, free of charge." Jamal's eyes widened in disbelief as he took the necklace from Mr. Carter's hand. He couldn't believe it. This was the same necklace he had so desperately wanted to buy for his mom. but now it was his, no strings attached. But, sir, I only have $12.50, Jamal said, his voice trembling with confusion. He had expected to pay for the necklace, but now, here it was, in his hands, and he hadn't spent a penny more than he had. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and awe. Mr. Carter smiled down at him, his voice filled with warmth. $12.50. And that's all that matters, he said, his words soft but filled with meaning. What matters is the heart, and you, Jamal, have more than enough of it. Jamal stood there, still processing everything that had just happened. The disbelief on his face slowly melted into a smile that grew wider and wider. He had come into that store with nothing but a dream to give his mom a special gift. And now, because of Mr. Carter's kindness, he was walking out with more than he could have ever hoped for. Meanwhile, the store owner stood motionless, his world crumbling around him. His head spun as he tried to make sense of what had just occurred. But nothing could change the truth. The tables had turned. Karma had arrived in full force, and the man who had humiliated Jamal was now left standing, powerless, his reputation shattered by his own actions. Mr. Carter turned to the store owner one final time, his gaze piercing. You'll find that people with character get further in life than those who use their position to hurt others, he said, his words a calm but sharp reminder of the lesson that had just been delivered. The store owner stood there, utterly defeated, unable to speak or defend himself. His hands shook as he glanced down at the mess he had created, his mind a whirlwind of regret. He had thought he could intimidate Jamal, but in the end, it was his own arrogance and cruelty that had brought him down. Jamal, with the necklace in hand, turned to leave the store, his heart lighter than it had been in ages. He had done the right thing, and now he was being rewarded in a way he could never have imagined. The lesson he had learned today wasn't just about standing up to injustice. It was about the power of kindness, the value of integrity, and the beauty of giving from the heart. As he stepped out of the store, he looked up at Mr. Carter, who had followed him out. "Thank you," Jamal said quietly, his voice full of gratitude. Mr. Carter smiled, his eyes warm. "You're welcome, Jamal. Now go make your mom proud." And with that, Jamal walked out into the world, no longer just a boy with a dream, but a boy with a future, one filled with possibility, love, and the reminder that doing the right thing could change everything. The store owner, meanwhile, was left standing alone, his empire reduced to rubble by his own actions, a lesson learned too late. Karma had indeed hit back hard, and there was no escaping the consequences. That evening, Jamal ran through the rain-soaked streets, clutching the gold necklace tightly in his hands. His heart pounded in his chest, not from exhaustion, but from excitement. Today had been a whirlwind, one that had started with shame and ended with something far more precious than he could have ever imagined. The necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was the culmination of a promise, a dream, and the kindness of a stranger who had changed everything for him. Jamal reached his small apartment, his face flushed with excitement. His mother, Sarah, was sitting at the table, exhausted from a long day at work. She looked up as Jamal entered, her tired eyes brightening when she saw him. "Baby," Sarah said with a weary smile, her voice tinged with the fatigue of the day. "How was your day?" Jamal didn't answer right away. He ran over to her, his eyes shining with pride. Holding out the delicate gold necklace, he said excitedly, "Happy birthday, Mama!" Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief. She looked at the necklace, then back at Jamal, her hands trembling as she took it from him. Her eyes welled up with tears as the weight of the moment settled over her. She had no idea how her son had managed to afford something so beautiful, something so extravagant. "Baby, how did you afford this?" she asked, her voice shaking. She tried to hold back the tears, but they spilled over anyway, leaving streaks down her cheeks. Jamal smiled proudly, his chest swelling with happiness. He wasn't ashamed anymore. He had done something good, something right. A kind man helped me, he said simply, his eyes softening with gratitude. He showed me what it means to stand up for what's right. Sarah looked at Jamal, her heart swelling with love and pride. She had raised him to be kind, to be strong, to do the right thing no matter what. And now she was seeing the result of that love and care, a boy who, despite his circumstances, had the heart of a champion. She pulled him into a tight hug, the weight of the moment overwhelming her. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, holding him close. "You're my hero." Jamal smiled, his heart full. His mom was everything to him. And now he had done something for her that he never thought was possible, a gift that showed her just how much he loved her. As they sat together, the necklace resting between them, there was a quiet moment of peace. The world outside could be cold and harsh, but inside this small apartment, there was warmth, love, and the promise of a future that was brighter than ever before. Meanwhile, just outside, across the street, Mr. Carter watched from a distance, his figure barely visible in the shadow of the building. He smiled to himself as he saw Jamal and his mother sharing a moment, the kind of moment that only came when someone had shown the strength to do what was right. He had changed a boy's life forever, and in turn, he had changed the course of their future. As he turned to walk away, Mr. Carter's heart felt lighter, knowing that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the most profound change. For Jamal, for his mother, and for him, this was a new beginning, a full-circle moment where love, dignity, and justice met in a way that would echo for years to come. The story had come full circle. Justice had been served, and in the process, a boy had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that kindness, honesty, and a pure heart could open doors to a future that was beyond his wildest dreams. As the camera pulled away, fading into the night, viewers were left with a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that in the end, kindness always wins.